graders. Today we're going to talk about the different ways you can use the parts of your math answer in a division problem to answer a word problem. And I have to tell you, these are some of my favorite types of questions because they are great thinking questions. They really require you to understand what's going on in the story problem. And it's important to remember that every question is unique. So how we use or maybe even don't use the remainder in a division problem totally depends on the question that we're asking. So just a little refresher, and those of you that watched the other remainder rules video, you know the story problem that goes along with this equation. But when we set up a division equation, our dividend, the unit will be given to us from the word problem. In this example, there was a family hiking 232 miles and they were going to do 9 miles per day. So the dividend of 232, the story problem told me that that was miles. The divisor of 9, the story problem told me, was because the family was hiking 9 miles per day. And then when I did the math, I got 25 remainder 7. I had to figure out what each part of the quotient and remainder meant. So since the family was hiking 232 miles and they were dividing it into groups of 9 miles per day, I knew that the quotient, the equal groups part of my answer, meant that they did 9 miles over 25 different days. And the remainder of 7 meant that they had 7 leftover miles to go. So they didn't do 26 full days of 9 miles, they did 25 full days of 9 miles, and then they still had 7 left over. Your remainder is always going to be the same unit as your dividend. So that leftover amount always links to whatever you were splitting apart. So let's talk about 4 different ways we could use the remainder. First, we might ignore or drop the remainder. So this would be true if we were making full groups of something, like full tables, full buses, full party bags, or if we had items that can't be cut or split apart easily. So if you couldn't take a pair of scissors or break something apart into smaller pieces very easily, chances are you're going to ignore it and only use the quotient or the equal groups part of your answer. We might also have to bump up the quotient. That means we would add 1. And this would happen if especially we're talking about people or animals. So when all people, animals, or items need to be used, we can't have a leftover. We would need to bump it up and include that leftover amount as another group that's just a little bit smaller than the rest of our groups. We might also need to use the remainder only. So this time we wouldn't use the equal groups quotient part of the answer. We would just use the leftovers. And a big clue would be the problem might say using the leftover. It might also tell you that you want to find items in the last of something, like the last bag, or on the last day, or in the last group. That's a big clue to use just the remainder. And finally, we might need to share our remainder. And sharing our remainder means we're writing it as a fraction. So we would take the remainder and make it our numerator, and take the divisor and make it our denominator. In this case, that would make our final answer 25 and 7/9. And we would use this when we're talking about food or drinks, or if we need to use all the items, but they can be split apart easily, and money or bills. So if we're paying a bill at a restaurant with friends, we can split up the amount that we're each paying so that the entire bill gets covered. So let's take a look at a couple different examples of using the remainder in 3 of these 4 ways. Okay, so I have 3 different examples here, and you can see I've already gone through and highlighted each sentence by itself so that we can read through the problem and then go line by line in order to figure out how to solve it. So the first question reads, Molly has $15 to buy notebooks that cost $4 each. How many notebooks can she buy? So this problem makes a lot of sense to me because it's something that I do all the time. I go to the store, I'm in Target, I know how much money I have, and I have to decide, do I have enough to buy multiple sets of something? So if I'm going line by line, the first sentence says, Molly has $15 to buy notebooks that cost $4 each. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sketching out a little picture. So that means notebook number one cost $4. I know she has enough to buy notebook number one. Then notebook number two also cost $4. So altogether, those two cost $8. I know she still has enough to buy that. Then if she picks up a third notebook, that costs $4. Altogether, that would be $12. So far, she's still within her 15. But if I tried to buy another notebook, that would make $16. Molly doesn't have that much money. So she really just has $3 left. So I'm going to draw three little dollar bills here. That wouldn't be enough money to buy another notebook. So that's a picture of what's going on. So you can see pretty quickly that Molly can only buy 3 of those notebooks because as much as we try and as polite as she is to the cashier, they're not going to sell her another notebook for $1 off just because she asked nicely. So the question's asking how many notebooks can she buy? So the problem, if we were to write out the math, would be 15 divided by 4. And we know that the quotient part of that would be 3 remainder 3. Now remember that 3 is 3 notebooks, and this 3, the remainder, is 3 leftover dollars, because our remainder is always the same unit as our dividend. So if we're looking back at that question, how many notebooks can she buy? The answer is 3 notebooks, because in this particular question, we had to ignore the remainder because that remainder of $3 didn't help us any. Let's take a look at another story problem. Jack has 15 photographs. He can fit 4 photographs on each page of his photo album. How many pages must he use to fit all 15 photographs in his album? Okay, so I'm still using 15 divided by 4. So I know my math is going to be 3 remainder 3. But I don't totally know what those parts mean just yet, so let's draw a picture to help us. Jack has 15 photographs, so I'm going to sketch out 15 photographs. He can fit 4 photographs on each page of his photo album. So this is page 1, it gets 4 pictures. Page 2 gets 4 pictures. Page 3 gets 4 pictures. But I need to use all 15 of these, and so far I've only used 12. So I'm going to say another page gets 3 pictures because it's going to get that leftover amount. Now the question sentence says, how many pages must he use to fit all 15 photographs in his album? Well, now I can see that I needed not just the 3 full pages, but a 4th page. So this means I do need to use that remainder by bumping it up. This is a bump it up question. And I need to answer that by saying he needs 4 pages, because I take that 3 full pages and bump it up to be one more group. Now finally, one last example. 4 brothers are given 15 Pop-Tarts. They agree to share the bars equally. How many full Pop-Tarts will each boy get? Okay, so I'm still splitting apart 15 Pop-Tarts and dividing it into the 4 brothers, which means that I have 3 remainder 3. I know this remainder 3 is extra Pop-Tarts because my remainder is always the same unit as my dividend. So I'm going to draw circles for the 4 brothers. And I'm going to split up those Pop-Tarts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They each get 1 Pop-Tart. 1, 2, 3, 4. They each have 2 full Pop-Tarts. So far I've used 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. They each get another full Pop-Tart. So far I have used 12. But now I have 3 Pop-Tarts left. A Pop-Tart is a pretty easy thing to split apart. So I'm going to put a little fractional amount in each of these sections to show that I'm splitting apart that last Pop-Tart. That tells me that each boy is going to get 3 3/4 Pop-Tart. This is an example where I am sharing the remainder. because I can easily cut a Pop-Tart into quarters, so I can give them each a fractional amount. So those are some different examples of ways that we can interpret the remainder or use it differently depending on our story problem. If you want to give yourself a challenge, try to write or rewrite one of these question sentences so that you would only use the remainder only. A couple different ways you can do that. Thanks for watching.